let's kick it straight into UFC 281 and our main event of the evening and new
Mm.
middleweight champion of the world, Alex Pereira, for the third time. Not once, not twice, three times. He has now beaten Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya, of course, was really been a really great middleweight champion, a guy who had almost cleaned out the entire division. Dominic Alex Pereira is still very fresh in the MMA full time. Of course, he's a kickboxer. That's where his two fights with him and Izzy took place at. Was a little late getting over into MMA. I believe this was his fourth or fifth fight in the UFC. Fourth? I think it was
Fourth. Yep.
fourth. His fourth fight in the UFC, and he's just beaten the man that pretty much nobody besides Jan Blachowicz can say they have beaten prior. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts here? Because I think to me, what stands out to me in kind of the now that we've had some time to reflect, it's been almost a little less than 24 hours since that main event was done. What stands out to me is that this fight was awesome. I mean, this was
Mm.
a just striker's delight. If you like good high level striking, this was it. Because not only was it very technical, but it gave you those big moments. There was back and forth, but there was a couple of occasions where some grappling got introduced. Dom, I know Dom was very big on hitting that point home in
Yeah.
the preview. Who would have thought? Even Alex Pereira getting a takedown to end. I don't know if that was round two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what's so funny, Dom, is we had given Israel Adesanya some grief, and I thought it was deserved. You know, in the grand scheme of things, it really matter if he puts on these highlight reel finishes and exciting barn burner fights every time out. No, as long as he wins and keeping it, then he was going to have the resume and the accolades to say he's one of the best of all time, and he's going to get paid while doing it. So, you know, who it really doesn't matter. But we're a week to week show here, so we have to talk about our thoughts in the moment. And in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, stock was low on Izzy in terms of excitement and interest. He's one of the biggest stars in the world, but for it felt like the more hardcore you are in the MMA, the less you were interested in seeing him fight. And this fight was enough to overcome all that. Like it was awesome to watch. And Dominic he lost.
Yeah.
So what does that say when we have been clamoring for this kind of fight and then he loses?
Yeah, man. I in a way ate my words from Thursday, but I'm glad I did because I was hoping for a good fight, and that's what we got. So if I have to eat my words time and time again on this show, I'll gladly take it if that means we're going to get a better fight in the octagon, and that's what it was. Alex was able to keep Izzy up against the cage predominantly for most of the fight. Granted, Izzy was still up going into that fifth round. I had it 3-1. The fact that he had Izzy on the back foot, the fact that he had Izzy back against the cage, really having to move, stay on his bike, if you will, said a lot about how ready for the moment I believe Alex was, even at times where it looked like Izzy was pulling away. He was getting the better shots in. He did not let up on the pressure. And that was one of the questions that Noah asked on Thursday was if you had to say who is going to be the one to initiate or pull that trigger when the time's needed, we assumed and guessed that it would be Alex, and it was for the entire fight. But it did force Izzy to fight a bit differently. Izzy had to be a little bit more aggressive himself. He was a lot more active than what we've seen in the past couple of fights. But of course, like Noah said, it doesn't really matter much when he loses that title. So, what a just absolute shocking moment. It really was. We've had two of the best champions of our era, of this show, of us being fans, um, and Noah specifically, even through the past 6 years that we've seen. And they both have lost within 3 months of each other in the fifth round when they were up in the fight with, and both of them were one win away from tying a certain Anderson Silva record. It's just absolutely insane what this sport can give to us, what it can take away from us, from these fighters. I mean, it's just you never know, and that's the beauty. Noah said this before in football. When you're down by 30 in the fourth quarter, there's not a 30-point touchdown pass you can throw. But you can be down and out. You could be 10-8 in round 1 and 2, but in round 3 or in round 5 in this instance, it takes one shot and you're the world champion. And that's what it was here. Alex Pereira proved or shocked the world. I'd say he shocked a majority of the fan base. I'll put it that way. He shocked my ass. He almost left me speechless, as did Leon Edwards. We're just not used to seeing greatness get dethroned. So when it happens, it's a very eye-opening, reflective moment, and that's all that UFC 281 encapsulated. That's what that main event was. My hat's off to the new champ. My hat's off to the legendary Israel Adesanya, and I believe we're going to get to see them two back in the cage again sometime next year.
Yeah, what's interesting is that I guess for me, what kind of surprised me is going in. If you would have asked me to predict this fight, I probably would have, and I don't know if this goes against what I said on Thursday, but sitting down Saturday to watch it, I felt like we were going to see that Israel Adesanya had just sort of heightened himself to a new level. It was now just he had improved such that all the build up for Pahea and the two losses, it really wasn't going to matter. That Izzy was just going to outpoint him and look like leagues above him. To something I had said before about the whole football comparison, the 30-point lead, that wasn't this fight at all. I mean, Pahea's in this fight from start to finish. Yeah, it was in lead, but that first round was completely Pahea's before the last two shots, right as the bell rung. I mean, Alex Pahea was obviously landing the more damaging shots for the majority of that fight. Now, he'd have times where he gassed, and Izzy was able to take him down and hold him down. You could tell that Pahea's full MMA game is not fleshed out yet, but he is lethal on the feet. And it was a great matchup for him because Adesanya also lethal on the feet, but he is not necessarily a well-rounded mixed martial. The rest of his MMA game, I would not say, is near the level of his kickboxing. So what surprised me was how game Pahea was. Like, I understand when you bring up that comparison, but I mean, you don't think that he had like a point lead on Pahea going into that fifth round, right?
No, I guess when I say that, it's just the fact of the matter that it was 3-1 on the judges' scorecards, and Izzy was winning that fifth round until the finish. So like he was going to win, even if Pereira won the fifth, it was going to be 3-2 for Izzy. So I guess that's where the analogy comes into play.
Yeah, so that's why the finish was imperative for him. I believe even Coach Glover Teixeira said in between rounds that I think he said, "You need a finish." And Alex looked at him. He said, "I need to knock him out." He said, "Yes, you need to knock him out." And he went in there and knocked him out. So, Dominic, I'm going to transition here to ask you a question about kind of what I think what's next is pretty obvious. It seems like this fight gets run back. Izzy's built up quite a long title reign at middleweight. I don't think there's anybody at middleweight that is quite ready for that title shot. Sure, if Whitaker beats Costa and if Pahea is still the chance you can make, but I do think Izzy has a claim to an immediate rematch. You know my thoughts on immediate rematch. Steve views immediate rematches. Champion, one of the biggest stars. He's going to get it. But I want to ask you, beats Izzy again? I don't care if it's a decision, a knockout, hell, a submission, whatever. I want to ask you about how sustainable this is going to be for Alex Pahea. Now, he just got the belt. I mean, we are less than 24 hours from him winning the thing. So it's obvious this is going to be very much in mine. Your opinion might change, but I want to know right here, right now, less than 24 hours after the fight, is Alex Pahea have the makings of a long-term champion in your eyes?
Oh boy, long-term champion. I could see it because, in a way, guys, aren't we just looking at a more powerful version of Israel Adesanya? Yes, he's not as well rounded as an MMA, as a mixed martial artist as Izzy, but to the core, Izzy is a kickboxer and a striker. That's what Alex Pereira is. And I think that although Izzy's not a great grappler, and he's not faced a ton of great grapplers thus far, I think he is able enough to defend against some of the wrestlers in this division. Not that there's a ton of great ones. There's one that could be coming to this division that throws a big wrench, but he's not here right now, so I'm not going to involve him. I think that we could see Alex tally off 1, 2, 3, 4 title defenses like Izzy. I really do. I think last night, no, I knew the guy was powerful. But when he's landing jabs that are knocking Izzy's head all the way back, this guy's power is unbelievable for 185. He's a light heavyweight. Let's just face the facts here. He's a light heavyweight fighting at middleweight. And I think he very well could beat a Robert Whitaker. I think he could beat a Vettori. I think he could beat a Costa. I really do. I'm not saying he will, but I think he can. And I think he has the skills to do a potential title run like Izzy did. I really do.
I'm gonna say no, and I'm just putting myself on a limb here. You do make a really good point about saying, is he just basically a more powerful version of Izzy? That's kind of making me rethink it. Like, man, yeah, I guess that's true. But that hole is huge. I mean, if you keep the fight standing with him, it's obvious that's a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
And Israel Adesanya, to your point, is a more well-rounded fighter, but Izzy has never he has never implemented a wrestling game plan. He's never implemented a jiu-jitsu game plan.
Mm-hmm.
I think where I'm agreeing with you in terms of his well-roundedness being better is he has become very good at avoiding the
Mm-hmm.
takedowns, at not allowing people to take him down. His defensive wrestling, his
Yeah.
defensive jiu-jitsu is
Right.
very good. Alex Pereira is not. If it's someone more competent with him on the ground, someone who knew a little bit more about what they were doing than Israel did, I think they get him out of there. I mean, he just seems kind of lost when he's on the ground. Now, it also benefits that he's at 185 pounds. There's not a lot of great wrestlers in this division, Dom,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially compared to the others. Your best wrestlers that are currently in the division are Marvin Vettori and Derek
Mm-hmm.
Brunson. I mean, those are the two best wrestlers in the middleweight division. And yes, then you have Hamzat, who is pretty committed to 170, but we're kind of hoping is the 185. He would be, of course, the best of the bunch if he were to go up to that weight class again.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it's sustainable, though, Dom. Yes, do I think he could knock out any of the guys I just mentioned? Derek Brunson, I know he's about out the door, but let's talk about like Vittori and Hamzat. Do I believe he could knock out those two guys if they stood with him? Yes, 100%, 10 times over. But I don't think they're going to. I think that they
Mm-hmm.
will. I think they will have an easier time taking him down than he's going to not have knocking them out. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if Vittori or Hamzat implements a wrestle heavy style on him, and you know what's funny is Hamzat's the better wrestler than Vittori, but I almost have more confidence in Vittori to win that fight simply because I know Vittori will stick to a game plan. I know that
Right.
he will not let the moment sort of overtake him and
Mm.
sort of make him fight out of character. Hamzat has not really shown me that he will do that. Yes, against Kevin Holland, it was very thorough and impressive, but that Gilbert Burns fight, man, he did not fight the smart fight there. So if
Right.
he were to come in with Bahia and let's say it's in an MSG or a state crypto.com center, somewhere big, big
Mm-hmm.
old show, right? Who's to say that fans, the cheering and jeering as they're walking out, doesn't make him want to stand and trade with this guy, which would be the dumbest thing ever. But
Right.
Hamzat's a crazy person. He'd be just
Yeah.
crazy enough to think he could do that. So, all in all, if those two guys stick to the game plan and take him down, I think they could get him out of there quick.
Mm-hmm.
It is a match now. Every fight starts on the feet, so that's the advantage. But man, it just seemed almost too like Israel. when he shot for those takedowns, I mean, Pereira just didn't look like he had much defense for it. Like he
Right.
just kind of stood, he was still standing straight up. His base was square. Like there wasn't a whole lot of defense behind those besides just trying to power out. And, sometimes that worked because Izzy, again, not a
Right.
well rounded wrestler, but against someone better, more competent in that area, it won't. But at the end of the day, Dom, you are right. Could he tally off that many title defenses based purely on if he can get someone out of there to keep them on the feet, develop some wrestling defense, and make a good title reign out of it? Of course he could. But
Yeah.
if you had to make me guess right now, I'm saying no. I think this is going to be more of a flash in the pan than a real sustainable title reign.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because when you ask that question, it's like, well, first and foremost, that first title defense does have to come against Israel Adesanya. So, it's
Mm.
just that's just a whole other part. Will we even get to see him go against some of these other guys? Maybe not. Maybe he doesn't get to defend the title at all. If he beats Alex, then what do we do? It's 1-1. Do we do a trilogy there, even though it'll be the 27th time they fought overall? Like, there's a lot of questions. This opened up, I think, a big old can of worms for the middleweight division that prior to seeing the result, I wasn't necessarily prepared for, but now we are
Mm.
here. So it's going to be an interesting next, I think, 365 days for the 185-pound division.
And that's my favorite part of this, Dom. I take no pleasure in Izzy losing. I don't. Like, even though I was critical of him in the past, it's not that I wanted him to lose.
No.
So when I say this, don't think I'm like celebrating. No, I'm not saying you, but people online do not think I'm celebrating Izzy losing. But I cannot deny the fact that Bahia winning this fight has made me the most interested in the middleweight division in years.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of that's because Izzy was so dominant and had such a long run, and some of those fights weren't great that my interest was a little low. And now you have some fresh matchups that can be made if Pereira gets past Izzy a second time. But also, it is the fact that Pereira feels more vulnerable than Izzy, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Izzy felt so much better than he just felt like such a thoroughly bad matchup. He's a great wrestling defense, doesn't allow takedowns, and he just snipes you on the feet.
Yeah.
Pereira has more power. He's bigger, stronger, but man, that hole is just there and it's just begging someone to shoot for that takedown and hold him there and go for the submission. So my interest in if Pereira does have 2, 3, 4 title fights moving forward, I'm gonna be so interested in every one
Every fight. Yeah.
because you know where he can win and where he can ultimately lose that title, and
Yes.
that's just gonna add a lot of excitement, I think.
Yes. Beautiful.